Hello everyone, Vangeris here, and today I'll be taking you through Skyrim while talking about anything and everything on our way to homemaking and defeating another Dragonborn. More on that in a moment. As previously mentioned in this series, we'll be tackling different parts of Skyrim's questlines in separate videos. Here's a reference for when we're tackling what. One point I need to make clear is that the first 10 videos in this series are focusing on the walkthrough aspect, where I show you the game, while throwing out opinions and criticisms as we go. These sections focus on showing and explaining the content more so than critiquing every aspect of it. We'll dive into a heavy analysis of the game in the final video, so if you're expecting more analysis during the walkthrough section, you may find it lacking. That's intentional, so I ask that you be patient while I work on the final part of this series. It's looking to be a monster of a video, as I plan to take my previous commentary analysis sections and kick it up a notch with just about everything found in this game, especially on the story side, as that is where the bulk of Skyrim's content comes from. But let's get back on track. As I hinted at earlier, today we'll be tackling the Hearthfire and Dragonborn DLCs, and several of the features that the DLCs hold. As a special note for this video, this will be split into two main sections for obvious reasons. Timestamps for each quest and section in the two DLCs can be found in the description, as well as my critical analysis playlist where you can find the rest of the Skyrim series once they're all uploaded, along with my other analytical content. Finally, feel free to leave a comment with your stories, opinions, and criticisms as this goes on. I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this one way or another. It helps me iron out the kinks in future videos by letting me know if I get anything wrong, word things poorly, or generally suck, and need to improve. I welcome the comments and criticisms. Now let's dive into worlds of construction and rivalry. We'll begin by working towards a house on our Stormcloak fanatic after souping him up. This requires land to build said house on, and that requires helping specific Jarls out. Basically, we'll help the Jarl of Falkreath, Dawnstar, or Morthal to earn some land. This ranges from doing a quest for the Jarl, doing a local quest like Waking Nightmare that affects the region, and some other mechanics can help you unlock the ability to purchase the land. For the sake of this video, we'll head to Falkreath and talk to the steward to buy the local land plot for 5,000 Gs. It works the same as buying a regular house, but the steward mentions there's no house available. Instead, they'll offer a piece of land we can build our own house on. This plot is near Pine Watch, letting us consider setting up shop next to a bandit base, but that's Skyrim for you. Once we arrive at the plot, we'll find a drafting table, a pseudo-forge setup, and a chest. This DLC lets us craft unique materials to build houses, which we can add to the blueprints on the drafting table to construct different parts of our house, and store those and other materials for construction. The gameplay loop for constructing a house, if you want to call it that, is draft a part of the house, craft or buy materials to construct it, repeat. It's a relatively simple process, but it takes some time to get all the materials we'll need. We'll use several smithing materials like hinges, iron fittings, locks and nails, along with grabbing materials from other places. We can mine quarried stone and clay near each house, but we'll need to head to a lumber mill to buy, you guessed it, lumber. The loggers will sell 20 logs for 200 gold, making me wonder how the economy works in this game, as we've seen strange prices across our journeys. Anyway, we'll construct the first part of our house, keep that in mind, along with some outside accoutrements like an apiary, a grindstone, and a stable. We'll have many options appear throughout construction, as we'll see soon. We'll enter our first shack, where we can construct several basic things inside you'd find in a house. A bed, a hearth with a cooking pot, some storage chests and shelves, etc. These are basically sub-construction areas that use a drafting table to build things in each room or section of a room. One useful aspect of this DLC is that, if you want to be minimalistic, you can. You can construct a small house with the basic things you need for your character, expand into a full-blown mansion if you like, or mix and match as you can have 3 plots of land with 3 very different houses on each of them. Granted, that's not enough to display every variation on what you can build, but it is quite helpful and entertaining to have these options available to players to some capacity. Now we'll get into expanding construction. With a completed house, you'll have 5 main areas: the small house, which can later be turned into an entryway, the main hall, the east wing, the west wing, and the north wing additions. As you can imagine, the main hall connects everything and is the largest room. The hall is 2 levels and comes with the option to add a cellar, bringing it to 3 levels. The cellar can house everything you need for smithing, with a forge setup, mannequins, weapon racks, an altar for all the gods of the Pantheon, and plenty of containers. The ground floor of the main hall houses a large dining room, and the upper level allows for extra bedrooms and an enchanting corner if you are so inclined. These areas also house several containers of varying types, so you will not want for containers to store things. That's never really an issue to begin with in the game, as every container is a black hole without space limitations, but it's helpful to have these things everywhere so players can customize where certain resources are. The east, west, and north wings are where customization becomes a harder choice, as you have 3 options per wing to choose from. The east wing can be made into an armory, a kitchen, or a library. The west wing can be made into a mass bedroom for a full family to live in, more on that later, a greenhouse, or an enchanter's tower. Finally, the north wing can become a trophy room, an extra storage room, or an alchemy lab. All of these areas are self-explanatory, but we'll see a tour of fully furnished houses soon. To fully furnish a house, we'll need to add things besides what we need to perform mechanical functions. In other words, we need decorations. These vary between different animal trophies you'd likely see in a log cabin of a hunter, along with aesthetic additions to each section of the house like food on the main hall table, balconies outside to get a glimpse of the views each house has, outside additions like small gardens or livestock, little things on the tables inside like sweet rolls and books, and so on. I'm not going to list everything that appears, but you should get the gist of what it'll look like now, or at least after the tour. Moving on, we'll start construction on the other 2 houses, and for the sake of the video, I've created each type of house variant, given the 3 plots and 3 options for each wing. One glaring negative to house construction is the resource gathering of everything. Building the houses themselves isn't too time-consuming or particularly expensive in its own right, but filling each with all the decorations and accoutrements for each wing are what will soak up most of your time and gold. There are a lot of resources needed to fully finish a house in the game, which will require a lot of trader talk. If we don't have enough gold to afford everything, we can always run other quests and slowly build up the home over time, but it will take a while to acquire everything, as several resources require specific regions, mostly sold by vendors, particularly the shrines in the cellar, as each shrine requires a necklace of their respective god. That's an example of something that doesn't take a ridiculous amount of time or money to acquire on their own, but it's just a small percentage of what we'll be shelling out to fund our mansions. I cheated everything in that I didn't already have for this run, mainly for the sake of recording time and production efficiency, so apologies if I triggered those who wanted me to do it legitimately. Anyway, after everything is constructed at each plot and within each section of the houses, we'll remove the workbenches in our finished abodes. Now time for the tours. I won't be saying much here, so soak up the atmosphere of the houses we can build. I will add that the Creation Club adds an aquarium as an option for the cellar, which is pretty cool. I didn't want to go over everything the Creation Club stuff adds, but I thought it's worth mentioning what a nice touch that is, and since I built it. Anyway, enjoy the tour. Hope you enjoyed Skyrim Realties, and will come back to visit soon. Now let's make the most of our new home with a new family. We'll be getting married and adopting children to get the full home experience. Marriage is in the base game, but the next major addition of the Hearthfire DLC is adopting children. We'll get into the adoption process soon, but first we need someone to watch over the little boogers while we're off saving the afterlife or murdering people. No matter what we do, we have a pretty charmed life in this game. Just for clarification, you don't have to be married to adopt in the game. I just like the idea of having the full package when I come home from an adventure, and bundling in the marriage mechanics with the adopting mechanics seemed like a good combo. Anyway, we'll get into marriage by acquiring an Amulet of Mara from Maramel in the Temple of Miraak in Riften. This is basically the same as posting you're single and ready to mingle in this game by talking to him and equipping the amulet. Once we have the amulet and have gained a high approval of someone, we can begin the courtship process. Since Isolde is best girl, besides the unmarriable Serana, sorry to say, we'll make her our spouse. She'll make a comment that she's surprised we aren't spoken for, and we'll ask if she is interested. She'll say she is, and that as brief as life can be in Skyrim, at least we'll have each other. Life sucks and then you die, so try marriage now. That's basically the gist of it. Not all NPCs are available to be married, and certain ones require various quests to be completed beforehand. Once this is done with whomever is chosen to spend their life with us, we'll head to Maramel to arrange a wedding. It'll be tomorrow from dawn until dusk, which gives us no time to plan or for people to arrive on time. I guess it's a cultural norm for Skyrim residents to just wing it and get it done as fast as possible. We'll attend the ceremony, where we'll get some special animations and see some people we've met before in attendance. Maramel will go over Mara giving birth to all of creation and pledging to watch over us as her children. From her love, we first learn to love one another, and that life lived alone is no life at all. Then we'll agree to be bound together forever, with the option to get cold feet. Then we're given 2 rings, and we're officially Mr. and Mrs. Stormbro. We'll have to decide where to live, that being Isolde's house in Whiterun, or one of our 3 mansions. We'll pick the house in Falkreath, as I enjoy the woodland area and view of the lake. Having a spouse allows an in-house vendor after they open a store, allowing for a small amount of gold per day to stack up as well. This passive income is a nice bonus for players who want to adventure around and make a little extra coin on the side through their spouse. Being married also gives bonuses to sleeping, as we gain Lover's Comfort, which improves skill progression by 15% for 8 hours, even if the spouse isn't there. Odd, but helpful as it stacks with other stone bonuses, except the Lover Stone for some reason. Maybe the game doesn't want us cheating on our spouse with a rock. Spouses also prepare home-cooked meals, boosting regeneration by 25% for 5 minutes after eating them, which can be helpful. Now we'll adopt children. We can pick to adopt from the orphanage in Riften, which requires us killing Grelod the Kind, as she doesn't allow adoptions, or we can find various children around Skyrim in need of a strong father figure. Since this character isn't a murderer, we'll find 2 kids in the world, starting in Whiterun. There are no specifics regarding the combination of kids, but we'll be going for an even split. We'll give Lucia a gold coin as she is begging, and we'll ask why. She says it's what Brenuin said she should do, and mentions him being the only one that's been nice to her since her mother died and her aunt and uncle kicked her out of their farm for being good for nothing. She wound up here and doesn't know what to do. Our heart goes out to her, and we'll offer to adopt her. She asks if we have a place she could live, a requirement as we can't let our kids sleep on the floor. Anyway, Lucia is grateful we're adopting her and starts calling us Papa. Then she says she'll be the best daughter ever. She'll get her things and say goodbye to everyone and meet us at Lakeview Manor. Now we need to find a son. We'll find Alessan in Dawnstar and learn his parents are dead as well. His pa was a sailor, and after he got sick, he and his pa were left here. Alessan's pa died a few days later, and he's tried to make do since then, but it's been hard. We'll offer adoption to the boy, and he'll be excited to join us at Lakeview, promising he won't be any trouble at all. We'll return to the main manor, and Lucia will meet us, saying it's everything she could have hoped for, and offers us a few things in the chest in her room, as thanks for what we've done for her. We can also play games with them like tag and hide and seek. Sometimes they'll ask for allowances, and we can give various amounts, even large ones like 1,000 gold. And we can gift the kids items as well. These gifts range from appropriate things like outfits and toys to actual daggers. I don't know what the developers think we'd want them to do with such things, but it's clear we're raising them to shank people. The kids can also give things to us upon returning after a journey, including potions, gems, ingredients, and other miscellaneous skill items. It's helpful and cute to think our children are bringing us things, even though the context of how they got them becomes a cause for concern regarding what they're doing while we're away. We can also order them to do chores, which can be fun to boss them around as a sort of release from our real parents bossing us around, but that's down to your own personal issues. The kids will also find animals they'll ask to keep as pets, with us being able to deny them that comfort or spoil them. This DLC really is the most wholesome one of the bunch. Then again, the kids can also fight with each other, so there's that. They can also be annoying at times if they keep running up to you to play when you just came to unload your inventory, but you tell them to shut up and leave like every Nordic father with a bottle of mead. Before moving on, we can ask our spouse about how the kids are doing, and Isolde will say they're doing fine, and the fresh air and house are just peachy. The dialogue changes depending on the spouse, disposition, and race, so check out who says what, as I don't want to find every single phrase for this short section of a video. Anyway, let's get into the next and final DLC of the game. We'll be returning to good old Dragonborn Dan for this one. The Dragonborn DLC is locked behind main quest progression, requiring us to progress up to Dragon Rising to meet some cultists we saw way back in the first video. This will make sense once we see what we have to do. For a refresher, since that was 12 hours ago, they call us a fake Dragonborn and try to kill us as a shadow of the true Dragonborn in the name of Miraak. Then we looted their note. We'll finally read it and learn it's a set of orders to find us, kill us, then return to Solstheim when they succeed. This also mentions a place called Raven Rock, and that the cultists came here on a boat called the Northern Maiden that came through Windhelm. Already, we're getting lots of information about new places to see. We'll head to Windhelm to meet Gjalland Saltsage, the captain of the Northern Maiden, who says if we're looking for passage to Solstheim, he's not going back. We'll ask why, and he details the cultists we met coming on board, then the next thing he remembered is him being here and they were gone. He says it's not right, losing whole days like that. He mentions there's been something strange going on at Solstheim for a while, but after this, he's done. We'll demand to be taken to Solstheim, choosing to bribe instead of persuade, with Captain Salty saying a man's got to make a living, so we'll cast off immediately. Then we'll be taken to Solstheim. We'll get a special animation of us arriving at the island, yes, island, at Raven Rock. We'll go over some things in a minute after we disembark. For now, we'll meet Andril Arano, who says he doesn't recognize us and assumes this is our first visit to Raven Rock. He demands to know our intentions, and will inform him we're looking for Miraak. He's not sure he knows him, but Raven Rock is sovereign territory of House Redoran, meaning we're in Morrowind territory, not Skyrim. Then he cautions us to abide by their laws. We'll ask some questions before we go, beginning with if he knows who Miraak is. He says he's unsure, as he swears he knows the name, but can't place it. We'll ask if he can tell us anything about Miraak, and he doesn't think so, but the name has something to do with the Earthstone, and get an objective to investigate. This is optional, but we'll be doing that in a moment. Next we'll ask why he's so suspicious of visitors. He says he has to be as second counselor, as the security of Raven Rock is his primary concern. We'll ask if security is an issue, and he says this isn't exactly the city of Blacklight, and we're on the frontier out here, and they've had more than a fair share of troubles. After all he's been through with Counselor Morvain, he refuses to let him down. Then we'll ask what their titles mean. Adril explains Morvain is House Redoran's representative on Solstheim. As second counselor, it's Adril's job to support him and make certain his rule is enforced. Before we head off, we'll see an interaction between Adril and Salty. Adril was starting to wonder what happened to Salt, and he says they were delayed by bad weather before mentioning he has the supplies for Adril, but they cost him double what they agreed upon, and there's nothing he can do about it. Adril berates him, saying he should know they don't have that much coin. Salt says the East Empire Company didn't give him a choice, as they've raised the prices again. Adril says they're gouging them, before saying he'll talk to Leril and see what they can do to pay for the supplies. Salt says not to worry about rushing it, which shows there is a level of decency share between these two, given their respective plights. Now we'll head to the Earthstone. It's an obelisk outside of town, where we see several townsfolk working on the structure around it. A dark elf named Neloth will come up to chat, saying we don't seem to be in the same state as the others here, and ask what we're doing here. We'll mention Miraak again, and he says it sounds familiar but can't place it. Then he recalls him, but says it makes little sense, as Miraak's been dead for thousands of years. We'll ask what that means, and Neloth isn't sure, but it's fascinating to him. He suggests it may deal with what's going on here. Then he says he can't give any answers, but there are ruins of an ancient Temple of Miraak toward the center of the island. He suggests we start there. Before we go, we'll ask Neloth what these people are doing, and he says they're clearly building something, but don't seem to have much to say about it. He's interested to find out what happens when they finish. We'll ask if he's tried to stop this, and he certainly hasn't, as interfering would make him unable to see how it turns out. We'll deal with these stones later. Now we'll head into the quaint little town of Raven Rock. It has everything we need. a general vendor, a blacksmith, an alchemist, a temple for the dead, and so on. Everything you could need in a frontier town. As you can tell, this place is covered in ash thanks to the eruption of the Red Mountain that has popped up from time to time in discussions throughout this series. This will play into the way the environment and living things here exist. We'll also find a few new things here not featured in the main game, such as these geodes that act as mines for gemstones. Keep an eye out for colorful rock, just like before. We'll make our way up to the Temple of Miraak, where we'll find other people working on building stuff around the temple. We'll reach the main complex and find Freya telling the others they need to leave this place, but they don't respond as the quest ends. At least it didn't end mid-conversation this time, which is a plus. We'll talk to Freya, who asks why we're here. We'll ask who she is, and learn she's Freya of the Skaal, and here to either save her people or avenge them. We'll ask what she's saving them from, and she's unsure, as something has taken control of most of the people on Solstheim. It makes them forget themselves and work on the creations that corrupt the stones and the very land itself. She says her father, Storn, the Skaal shaman, says Miraak has returned to Solstheim, but it's impossible. We'll say Miraak tried to have us killed, and she says we both have reason to see what lies beneath. She says we should go, as there's nothing she can do here. The Tree Stone and her friends are beyond her help for now. We'll need to find a way into the temple below, and then we can ask questions. We'll ask what she knows on Miraak, and she explains that his story is as old as Solstheim. He served the dragons before their fall, and was a priest in their order. Unlike most, he turned against them and made his own path, but his actions cost him dearly. The stories say he sought to claim Solstheim for himself, and the dragons destroyed him for it. Then we'll be interrupted by a cultist, which happens way too much in the game where we're talking and get interrupted. We'll try to talk to Freya again, and it'll work, but she'll also run off, so thanks cultist for ruining our conversation. Anyway, we'll ask if she's here by herself, and she says a few of the Skaal are left unaffected by this curse. Then we'll ask about her people, the Skaal. She says they lived on Solstheim for many generations, and are tied to the land itself. They try to serve the Allmaker, to live in balance with nature, instead of exploiting it as others do. Then we'll ask what the Tree Stone is, and Freya says it's an ancient stone of power and a connection to the Allmaker. It represents one of the aspects of nature, a part of the Allmaker's creation. She'll mention there are other stones around the island, and she fears what may have happened to them. Now we'll head inside the temple. Freya suggests looting the nearby rooms before we go deeper for supplies, so we will, and then move into the bowels of Miraak's temple. We'll fight through several cultists, who are primarily magic users, so anti-magic gear will be particularly useful here. Freya comments on the torture that happened at Miraak's hands in service of the dragons, once we reach a large chamber with corpses in cages. Like much of what we've learned about dragon cults, they love their torture for the dragon overlords. We'll continue through several Draugr and traps before reaching an Uber trap Freya won't attempt to evade. We'll leave the chicken behind and dodge the blades by hanging left to reach the lever to turn them off. Amazing stuff. Anyway, we'll cut through more cultists and Draugr before reaching the sanctum. We'll kill many more things and make it to a room with the word of power strength for dragon aspect, one of the new shouts, before we're ambushed by Draugr, ending with a fight with the gatekeeper. Guess what's on her corpse? We'll grab the key to use on the hidden door, and eventually reach a room with a strange book on an altar. This black book will make Freya say it seems wrong, so we'll do what every protagonist does and grab it. When we read it, we'll be transported to another world, where we'll find Miraak talking to strange beings before he immobilizes us. He demands to know who we are, then senses we are Dragonborn and have defeated Alduin. This dialogue changes depending on how many dragons we've killed and if we've finished the main quest, which is a nice touch. But then he says he could have slain Alduin himself back when he walked the earth, but he chose a different path. He says we have no idea of the true power a Dragonborn can wield, and uses a shout to get glowing armor. It looks neat, and we can obtain it through progressing the dragon aspect shout we just learned. Then he says this realm is beyond us, and we have no power here. He says it's only a matter of time before Solstheim is also his, as he already controls the minds of its people. Soon they will finish his temple, and he can return home. His minions will hurl mental insults at us until we are returned home as Miraak flies off on his dragon. Freya asks what happened and mentions we seemed as though we weren't really here. She could see us and see through us. We'll say we saw Miraak, and she demands to know where he is and if we can reach him. We'll explain the book took us to him, and Freya says this is a dangerous thing. We must return to her village and show this to her father. Perhaps he can make sense of what's going on, and the quest ends. We'll exit the temple, and Freya will mention the green light coming from the Windstone, where her people work against their will. We'll aid them when we can. Then we'll follow Freya, who directs us to the village. She explains Storn has used his magic to raise a barrier around it to protect the few of us left. The fact the barrier is still up is a good thing. Then we'll reach the Skaal village. We'll find Storn and 2 others performing a ritual, and we'll let him know the situation. He fears there is too much we don't know yet. He says time is short, as his magic grows weak, and will explain what happened with the book. He says legends speak of Miraak's temple, where terrible battles were fought, and dragons burn it to the ground in rage. The legends also speak of something worse than dragons buried within, and it means Storn's fears have come to pass. Miraak was never truly gone, and has returned. He'll ask if we're Dragonborn, and when we confirm it, he says we may be connected to Miraak, as he is also Dragonborn. This means we could save them, or bring about their destruction. The few of the Skaal left here can't protect themselves for much longer, so we'll be directed to Sering's Watch. We are to learn the word that Miraak learned long ago, and use that knowledge on the Windstone. We may be able to break the hold on their people and free them from Miraak's control. Much of what was known has been lost to the ages. Miraak was Dragonborn, and yet served dragons. He was a priest in their order, highly esteemed, and very powerful. Then he turned against them and became something they feared. He was defeated long ago, but was never destroyed. We'll ask what he means by freeing his people from control. Storn says some dark influence wields power over them, forces them to forget themselves and act against their nature. At first it was only during the night, but now every moment is spent building some strange shrine around the Windstone. He believes if the shrine can be destroyed, the Skaal will be free once more. Then we'll ask why we need a word of power, and he says Miraak is behind this, so the knowledge he has gained as Dragonborn is at the heart of it. As Dragonborn ourselves, we too can wield this power, perhaps to a better end. Now we'll head to Sering's Watch. We'll sneak in over the mountain and learn the word of power, Earth, Bend Will, and we'll use one of our dragon souls to learn it. The devs place a dragon here in case you need it, but it also displays a feature of this questline once it begins. Miraak will steal dragon souls from you after this quest begins. This happens every 4th dragon after this first one. In other words, 25% of all dragon souls will go to Miraak, but we've stolen enough souls to get what we need done. We'll return to the Windstone near the Skaal village and use the Bend Will shout on it. The shrine around it will be destroyed, and a lurker will appear, a beefy enemy from another dimension we'll see later, and after defeating it, we'll return to the Skaal village after freeing its people. Storn senses we have succeeded, and says we are allies to the Skaal, so they will be allies to us. Then we'll get a quest we'll do later to cleanse all the stones across Solstheim. Storn suggests we can free the hold on all the stones, and says it may not stop what Miraak's doing, but it may slow his progress. We'll say we need to stop Miraak now, and he says he can't help with that, and none here can. We need the knowledge Miraak himself learned, and we'll need to learn more about this black book. We'll ask Storn about the book, and he says it doesn't look like something of the dragon cult, and is an unnatural, dark thing. He would have nothing to do with it, but the wizard Neloth, the dark elf we met earlier, might know something. He came to them some time ago asking about black books, and Storm believes he knows a great deal about them, perhaps too much. We are to seek him out, but are cautioned as something else is at work here. Then the next quest comes, but we'll do some stone saving first. We'll ask Storm some questions before we go, beginning with what happened when we yelled at a rock. He says the power of the stone was corrupted, and was a source of influence that had taken control of the Skaal. Our shout broke whatever controlled the stone, and restored its true nature as a conduit of the Allmaker's gifts. Freeing the other stones will diminish whatever dark influence is spreading across Solstheim. We'll ask about the other stones, and he says there are 6 sacred stones: wind, water, earth, beast, sun, and tree. Through them, the oneness of the land is maintained. Freya says that the tree stone now stands imprisoned in Miraak's new temple, and he doubts we can free it until his power is broken. We may be able to cleanse the other stones, and even if this does not stop Miraak, it surely will delay his return. Then we'll ask what Storn knows about the Black Books. Their traditions do not speak of them, but they are connected to Miraak, as we read one and saw him. The book's power comes from the same dark source as what corrupted the Windstone. He tells us to beware, as we are walking the same road as Miraak. We'll ask why he thinks Neloth can help find Black Books, and he says Neloth is searching for them and already found one. He showed it to Storn when he came here. It was like the one we found, and is a thing of dark magic. Since these things are scary, we'll cleanse the stones for now as we head into the next quest. The stones will be marked on our map for easy locating, but not easy travel. They're spread out across the island, so we'll get to see the sights of Solstheim as it were. The act of cleansing them is the same as before, so while we cleanse them, I'll explain what the stones offer us mechanically. They each give a power we can use a single time before needing to return to the stone to recharge. It's basically a more annoying use of shrines, and I'm serious here. Having to go back to recharge it over and over is an absolute waste of time. Having it refresh on a timer like other powers would absolutely work, and I have no idea why the devs made it work this way. Getting to the actual powers, the Earthstone gives you the ability to ignore 80% of all physical damage for 30 seconds. The Beast Stone summons a Werebear for 60 seconds wherever we're pointing, which is affected by conjuration perks to increase the lifespan. The Windstone causes targets to take 20 frost damage for 10 seconds, plus stamina damage. The Sunstone causes a 100-point explosion centered on the player, and does increased damage to closer targets. The Waterstone heals everyone close to the player for 200 points. The Tree Stone causes all spells to cost 75% less for 60 seconds. As you can tell, these powers are incredibly niche, especially given the single-use aspect before refreshing. It's like the devs just said, "We need more powers, so what do we have?" "I don't know, the player explodes and it either damages everything or heals everything? Give this straw man a raise." Granted, some of these are definitely beneficial, but it seems clear, at least to me, that they ran out of ideas and made up something to fill the void beyond increase good thing by X% or decrease bad thing by X%. Let's debate in the comments, as I hardly use these stone abilities given all the other powers and abilities we get outside of them. Let me know if you've had a better experience with all of these stone powers. Anyway, once all the stones are cleansed, minus the Tree Stone, as that requires us to complete the main Dragonborn questline, this quest will end, and we can move on. Now we'll head to Neloth at his mushroom house in Tel Mithrin. We'll have to go up a floating elevator thing, which is neat the first time you do it, but gets old when you have to go up and down it over and over to do various quests and any other interactions here. Just a reminder, a gimmick needs to be thought through beyond the first interaction of, "Oh, this is different." You'd be surprised how many cool gimmicks become stale rather quickly upon a little repetition. Anyway, Neloth remembers us from Raven Rock, and will mention he may know where to find black books. He refers to them as tomes of esoteric knowledge that Hermaeus Mora scattered throughout the world. He asks if we read it, as we apparently have a look after reading it, and he says dangerous knowledge is still knowledge, and therefore useful. We'll say we need to know what Miraak knows to stop him, and Neloth calls that a dangerous path, as Herma gives nothing away for free. He says we may end up like Miraak, and they'd have 2 power-mad Dragonborn. We'll ask if he knows where we can find another black book, and he does, as they're not hard to locate once we know how to look for them. He has one here that he's been using to locate others. We'll be surprised he has one, and he says he wasn't idle while madness engulfed Solstheim. He says his book isn't what we're looking for, as he's sure it isn't connected to Miraak. But he does know where one book is that can help. We'll ask why his book won't help us, and he says it's clearly not associated with the same power that has overtaken the island. He's not talking about Herma, but a specific book that Miraak presumably derives his power from. Then we'll ask where the book we need is, and Neloth says he's not been able to get it, but thinks we may be able to unlock the secrets of the Dwemer left behind. We'll ask what they have to do with this, and he says forbidden knowledge is somewhat of a specialty of the dwarves, and he questions if we thought they'd leave it alone. The Dwemer discovered the book and took it to study it. Nell found their reading room in the ruins of Nechardak, but the book is sealed in a protective case which he hasn't been able to open. Perhaps the 2 of us could get the book, and we'll be off to Nechardak. This Dwemer ruin is along the coast and surrounded by water, which will become relevant shortly. We'll kill through the Reavers living here before we can enter. A quick note on the Reavers. They're basically just a stand-in for bandits. They aren't that different from bandits in the base game, but I do appreciate the new name since we are in a different location and culture, so we can expect a few differences. This isn't a major one, and some could call it a lazy way to make new enemies, but I would say it's a mixed bag of same type, different cultural name. Anyway, Nell will become one with the door as he explains the Dwemer certainly knew how to build things for the ages, and these towers outlasted their creators by millennia. He'll unlock the door to the main complex, as he's been here before and locked it up to prevent others from tampering with the area, and he explains cubes operate control pedestals to unlock areas, which will also become relevant later. We'll head inside and find the book underneath a glass container in the ground. Nell calls it tantalizing that it's so close, but he's tried magic to open it and it didn't work. We'll have to restore the steam supply to this room, which Nell says will give us access to the book. Then we'll head to the boilers in the next area. Nell mentions he came earlier alone, and finds an assistant is essential for this kind of work. Then he calls Nechardak the City of 100 Towers, and in its day, it was the largest of the Dwemer archives, and perhaps the most advanced. In the old stories, when the Nords came to conquer it, it said the Dwemer submerged the entire city beneath the sea until the invaders gave up. Nell has his doubts, but the city was a marvel of Dwemer engineering, but now reduced to this. Nell goes on to say we can see most of the lower levels of the city are flooded, but it's not hopeless as the pumps still seem to work. He'll place a cube on a pedestal to activate the pumps, but we'll need more than the 1 cube we currently have. We'll need the 4 boilers operational to provide steam to the room with the book, so we need 4 more cubes. We'll follow Nell and bring his cube with us. He'll head to a console and say it shows the location of 4 more cubes in this section of the city. It looks like they were moved to the lower levels, perhaps to try to control the flooding before the city was abandoned. He notes this would suggest the city was originally sunk during the first cataclysm of Red Mountain, or the Dwemer's servitors continue to try to preserve the city after their creator's disappearance. We'll get to a door, and Nell says 3 of the cubes are through here, and we'll begin the Dwemer puzzlery. We'll find a cube nearby, which stops a wall of fire, allowing progression, and we'll fight through many Dwemtech defenders. You can probably pick up on how this whole area will work. Nell will comment on things as we go throughout this area, with him saying this must be the great workshops of Nechardak. In the glory days, it was reputed to be able to assemble a complete automaton in a single day. Much of the Dwemer army at the Battle of Red Mountain must have come from here. Nell says we'll need to lower the water level to progress. We'll use the cubes to lower the water level, and another control switch to activate a staircase. We'll find an additional cube afterward, and Nell comments that every cube we retrieve shuts down corresponding pumps, raising the water level and affecting where we can go. We'll have to be careful with that. We'll go through another pathway that opened up and use the water level rising to reach the final cube of the area. In this next area, we'll meet Dwemer Ballista, which are essentially ballista on legs. They deal damage while ignoring armor, so be aware of snipers staking you from afar. We'll grab the cube and use a control switch to loop back around to the main chamber. We'll lower the water level here, and Nell says the last cube is somewhere through the northern door. We'll use multiple cubes to access the next area and go through a minor bridge-dropping puzzle thing. We'll avoid more traps and open a door to the last cube. The water level will rise, and we'll collect all our cubes in use and return to the main chamber. We'll spread our cubes around, 1 to lower the water level, and the other 4 to activate the steam pumps. Then we'll head upstairs to grab our book as we transition into the next quest. After unlocking the black book, Nell says we deserve to look at it first. Then he says it could be dangerous, as these books are known to drive many people insane. We'll read the book, and as we move into the freaky realm, Nell says to say hello to Hermaeus Mora for him if we see him, which we will. We'll appear in an area, and old Mora will say hello as another knowledge seeker enters his realm. This is Apocrypha, where all knowledge is hoarded. He says we may prove clever enough to uncover the secrets here, and if so, we are welcome. But if we are a fool or coward, we are in peril. He explains we can read the book again and escape before Apocrypha claims us forever. Then we'll use the scry to activate the path forward. We'll have to progress through the area, which is full of jumping away from slime tentacles, maneuvering through moving pathways, and fighting enemies we've seen before, like the Lurkers and the Seekers, the floating minions that look like Cthulhu Jr. These book sections are essentially a repeated formula. We start after opening the book, and have to overcome challenges as we progress to each subsequent chapter in the book, which take us to the next area until you reach the end, where we get a reward. The enemies here can be quite tough, but there are also benefits from the color-coded Venus flytrap-looking things that restore magicka or stamina. Additionally, the loot here is unique, as most enemies will drop a variety of books, so if we want to start a collection, this is a good starting point, assuming you can handle a maddening puzzle area with creepy enemies and tentacles coming out of pools of sludge. It's a bit freaky, but some people like that kind of stuff. Anyway, we'll reach the end of this book, and Mora will appear, saying seekers of knowledge come to him, sooner or later. We'll ask what he wants of us, and he says we've sought forbidden knowledge that only one other has obtained. We are Dragonborn, like Miraak before us, both seekers of knowledge and power. We'll agree we came to learn Miraak's secrets, and Mora explains all Miraak knows he learned from Mora. He knows what we want, to use the power as Dragonborn to bend the world to our will. He will give us knowledge we need, but didn't know we needed it, and we'll learn the second word of power for bend will, mind. We can use it to bend the wills of mortals to our purpose. Mora says this isn't enough, as Miraak knows the final word of power, and without that, we can't hope to surpass him. Miraak served him well and was rewarded. Mora can grant us the same power as Miraak wields, but all knowledge has a price. When we ask what Mora wants, he says it's knowledge for knowledge, and he wants the Skaal secrets. They've withheld them from Mora for many years, and the time has come for this knowledge to be added to his library. We'll agree to his terms, and he knows we'll bring the Skaal secrets to him. Only then will he give us the knowledge that we seek. We are to send the Skaal shaman to Mora, as he holds the secrets that he wants. Now we'll get our Black Book reward. Each book grants us one of 3 abilities, this time between boosting our Unrelenting Force, Fire Breath, or Frost Breath Shout. Unrelenting Force can now do more damage, and may disintegrate enemies. Fire Breath can now summon a fire worm for 60 seconds after killing an enemy with it, and Frost Breath can encase enemies in ice. Since we're a Dragonborn and we respect the classics, we'll boost Unrelenting Force so we can atomize our enemies. We'll return to the mortal world, and Neloth will ask what happened, as different people see different things. We'll say we talked to Mora, and Neloth finds us acting surprisingly sane, and asks what he wanted. We'll explain what Mora demands, and Neloth says it sounds like a bargain to him. Mora learns fascinating new ways to skin a Horker, and we become the second most powerful Dragonborn that ever lived. He's got a point. He'll say he has a lot to think about, and he'll head back to Tel Mithrin with ideas to find more black books. More on that later. We'll head outside and encounter Crozulha, a dragon who says Miraak commands our death, and he's here to enforce it. We'll slay him and head to Storn for those Horker secrets. We'll find him kneeling outside and inform him of what Mora wants. We learn the Skaal have many tales of Mora trying to trick them into giving up their secrets, and he comes again. We'll ask why they call him Herma Mora, and Storn explains Mora is the demon of knowledge, and has always been their enemy. Then we'll ask about their secrets, and he says the ancient lore, handed down from shaman to shaman since the Allmaker gave Soulslime to the Skaal, explains how to talk to the wind, how to listen to the earth, and so on. Nothing of power or mastery. We'll ask why Mora would want these secrets, and Storn says it's in his nature to hoard secrets, and their value to him is of no consequence. The fact the Skaal kept knowledge from him merely increases his desire for it. We'll say it's the only way to learn the final word of power we need, and Storn says it falls to him to be the one to give up their secrets, but he doesn't know if he has the strength to face him. The tree stone is still corrupted, and the land is out of balance, but with the other 5 stones restored, it may be enough. We'll ask if he'll give Mora what he wants, and Storn agrees. The Skaal tell of a day when they must finally give up their secrets, when Herma Mora finally wins. As the shaman, Storn's duty is to guard these secrets, but also to decide when it is necessary to give them up. He believes that time is now, and if he's wrong, he hopes his ancestors forgive him. Storn asks for the Black Book to speak with Mora. He will make sure Mora lives up to his part of the bargain. We'll give him the book, and Freya says he can't do this, as the book is evil and against everything he taught her. Storn says he must do this, as it is the only way to free Soulslime from Miraak's shadow. There comes a time when everything must change, as nothing that lives remains the same forever. He tells Freya not to fear, as this is the destiny the Allmaker has laid out for him. Freya says she will stand beside him to face whatever Mora has in store. Storm will open the book, and Mora's tentacles do their kinky thing, while he says the Skaal finally yield their secrets to him. Storm calls Mora a liar and won't give them up for him. Mora will tell us we delivered the gift he requested, and in return, he gives us the word of power, Dragon. We need to challenge Miraak as he kills Storn. We will either be a worthy opponent or his successor. Then we'll move into the final main quest of the DLC. Freya is clearly distraught by her father's death, as we loot the book off him. It was only a loan after all. Then we'll unlock our fully powered Bend Will Shout. Freya says her father sacrificed himself so we could destroy Miraak, and his master's shadow from the land. We'll read the Black Book Waking Dreams, and we'll enter Cthulhu Land again. We'll need to reach Miraak's temple, so we'll go through the motions and fight through all the locals on our way to the big boy. We'll find some books as we progress through the area that we'll need for a puzzle later on. Once we reach it, we'll need to place each book on the correct pedestal. The image on the pedestal corresponds to the title of each book we picked up. Delving Pincers, Boneless Limbs, Prying Orbs, and Gnashing Teeth will be placed appropriately, and we'll progress further. We'll reach a point without a path and find another word for dragon aspect, armor, before using the Bend Will Shout on Sarotar. He says our Thuum has the mastery, and will carry us to Miraak. This DLC allows us to ride dragons, which sounds awesome, but the mechanics of it are rather limited given what you'd expect. We essentially target enemies and can hit them with magic, and the dragon can attack them as well with breath attacks. We basically fly around slowly beating down targets. I say slowly, not because the dragon is weak, but because we spend half the time flying around. We essentially fight like the typical dragons do, but now we're on their backs. What a great expansion of dragon mechanics, right? Anyway, we'll reach Miraak at the top of his tower as he comments on Sarotar being swayed to our Thuum so easily. Then he says he'll greet us. He'll say the first Dragonborn meets the last one at the Summit of Apocrypha. He says it's no doubt just as Mora intended. calling him a fickle master. But now Miraak will be free of him, as Miraak's time in Apocrypha is over. We are here in our full power, and thus subject to his full power. We will die, he will take the power of our soul, and Miraak will return to Solstheim and be master of his fate once again. Then we'll fight Miraak, and he'll chuck spells and shouts at us, along with dashing around and slicing us with his sword. At times, he'll become ethereal and absorb the soul of a dragon nearby to refresh himself. He'll change into a tentacle goo build at times as well, and will eventually beat him down. Hermaeus Mora will grab Miraak and berate him for thinking he could escape Mora. Miraak can hide nothing from Mora here, but now Mora has a new Dragonborn to serve him as he skewers Miraak with a tentacle. You know what the Daedric Prince is into. Then Miraak says, may we be rewarded for our service, as he was, and the quest ends. But we've got more to see. Mora says Miraak harbored fantasies of rebellion against him, and tells us to learn from his example. If we serve him faithfully, we will continue to be richly rewarded. Then we'll loot Miraak's skeleton for his gear after being gifted several dragon souls. His mask increases magicka by 40, the boots and gloves add 5% of the dragon breath and spell absorption of his robes, the robes add 15% of the magicka from dragon breath and spells, and has a chance on hit to spawn a tentacle explosion. His staff can spray writhing tentacles on the ground that stagger and poison foes, and finally, the sword absorbs 15 points of stamina. But there's even more to look at. We get a set of bonuses from the Black Book that allows us to reset a skill back to default, and refunds all the skill points for the price of a dragon soul. We can do this as many times as we want, so that's quite useful for respecking without having to go through a legendary level and grinding to the top again. Then we'll return to Solstheim. Freya will come up to us afterward, and she says she can feel it. The tree stone is free again, and the oneness of the land is restored. She asks if Miraak is defeated, and will say Storn didn't die for nothing, and Miraak won't threaten Solstheim again. She'll thank us and say, whatever our other reasons for acting, we've done the Skaal a great service, and they won't forget what we've done. Before we go off on other adventures, Freya offers a word of advice and warning. As the new shaman of the Skaal, she is charged with the spiritual well-being of her people. While we are not of the Skaal, we are a friend, so she gives us this warning. Herma Mora forced us to serve him in order to defeat Miraak, and she says to not let Mora lure us further down that path. The Allmaker made us Dragonborn for a higher purpose, and we shouldn't forget that. With that, the final main questline is over. With the Dragonborn quest completed, and the final major questlines wrapped up, we'll be moving on to minor content in the next video, spanning both the base game and DLCs. As you're familiar with at this point, we'll be tackling different things in different videos, so stay tuned for more. There will be a link to my game commentary playlist in the description, so keep an eye on that if you want to watch my other stuff, or if you want to find where all the Skyrim videos will be. The next 2 videos in this series will take a while to get through, as there is a lot to cover, so bear with me as I'm trying to wrap this series up by the end of the year, but we'll see how far we get. I will mention once again that this was more of a walkthrough with critical commentary as opposed to a full analytical breakdown or critique, but that is coming in the final video of this series. Keep that in mind and hold on. I know it's taking a while to get there. Consider each of these videos as context for what is to come, and believe me when I say, that final video will be massive. For now, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and God bless.